episode of Investors and Operators, I sit down with Debbie Ackerman, co-founder of Twin Bridge Capital Partners, a Chicago-based private equity firm, which has raised over $2.5 billion since founding in 2005. Debbie is also an impact investor and created Project Sunflower, a network of women in private equity. She also serves on boards, including Thrivent Financial, a Fortune 500 not-for-profit financial services organization. And Debbie, I cannot wait to get into this. Thank you so much for joining today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, my first piece of curiosity, my first question is, last year you ran a 1:28 half marathon, which is a 6:47 pace, which is significantly faster than my 9-minute pace on my best half. What role has fitness played in your life and your family life? You know, how did you start down this path?
Well, my family and I are all really into fitness, especially running and triathlons. My 3 children have all been D1 runners in college, and I've competed in some national and international cross country and track meets. And the rest of my family, aside from me, have all done a lot of triathlons, including Ironmans. And I guess what I found in sports is, and in particular in running, it develops some really fantastic characteristics. You know, I think it sets you up to have a goal-oriented mindset and really creates a lot of discipline. And those are traits that you can carry into sort of all aspects of your life. The other thing that's been wonderful is really, you know, creating friendships with other people who share similar passion and bonds, and creating some great family bonding time as well.
In endurance been like? You know, do you have, for example, a yearly goal with the family that's fitness related, or kind of what have you done in your
Well, you know, just for me, one of the things that helps keep me motivated is to have a different goal every year. And so each year I pick a different distance with a specific time goal, which are usually stretch goals for me. So I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. And just by way of example, some of my recent goals have been a sub 5:30 mile, sub 19 5K, and then, as you mentioned, a sub hour and a half half marathon. And what's kind of cool with doing different distances is that they all require different training and different speed work, and that kind of keeps it interesting. I've also been able to, and my family has too, compete across different countries and throughout the US. And so going to different locations and putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, you know, trying new things is a real source of motivation as well.
What do you think it is about your nature, your families, and maybe others who do that type of sport that makes us want to pursue challenges? I mean, you could be chilling out in whatever house that you want, whatever boat, and be skiing, et cetera, lifestyle, instead of putting yourself through pain and putting yourself through that type of challenge. Like, why do you do it? And why do you think it's important to do at every stage of our lives?
Well, I think for me, and this probably doesn't sound very good, but I have this competitive gene in me that is just constantly wanting to be out there competing. And so a part of it is just really getting out there and seeing how you stack up relative to other people. And I also just can't sit still. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, well, speaking of maybe not standing still, on November 6th, 2021, I am committed to do an Ironman race in Panama City, Florida. I was inspired by the story of Chris Nikic, who is a 21-year-old man and became the first person with Down syndrome to do an Ironman. His story convinced me to push myself significantly harder than I've ever done. I've done a couple marathons, but I need to be better. So I guess my question is, would you be open to joining the, I guess we'll call it the 51 Labs 2021 Ironman team?
Well, that's amazing. I'm really, really impressed with you. What a great goal. My husband and my daughter have both done the Panama City, Florida Beach Ironman. So they might be better candidates for you than I am. So I do have a really funny story from when my husband did Ironman Florida a couple years ago. His parents actually have a place in Panama City Beach right along the running route. So right where the run goes. And so he's doing the race, and he was probably a little bit undertrained that year. And he gets to their house, which is at about mile 13 in the run. And he comes inside and he sits down on the couch and he said, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. And his mom was there and she came right over. She's a really strong woman. And she said, you're getting up and you're going back out there because we don't want your daughters to see you quitting. And so she made him finish the race, and he did fine. And so I guess my suggestion is I'll make sure that I've got my mother-in-law down in PC when you're doing it, because she's the best cheerleader ever and she'll make sure you finish.
That is incredible. Wow. I mean, okay, then that's going to my next question, which is like, how can I be a quality father to our 4-year-old daughter, our 1-year-old son? Do you think that you guys have been successful parents, and what can I learn? How can I be a better dad? How can we be better parents?
That's a great question. And I feel really lucky because I do feel blessed to have such wonderful children. My one piece of advice for you would be to develop a strong relationship of trust with your children. Trust that they're good people and that they want to do the right thing, and give them the benefit of the doubt as often as you can. I think it's almost like a positive circle of reinforcement. Trust is really key.
That's awesome. I think, does that start happening at like 10 and 11 years old?
No, right away.
All right.
Right away.
Well, let's rewind a little bit and kind of go to, this next chapter of your life. After spending, 15 years building up a firm and the name that it has in the market. And now you have transitioned out and are, pursuing the next chapter. What does that look like for you? And maybe even like, what does success look like in this next chapter?
Yeah, the next chapter for me is really focused on empowering women to have more of a voice in private equity. The private equity industry is dominated by males, and in particular on the senior investment front, it's all males. And I think studies would show that companies perform better when they have diversity of thought in leadership positions. And many investors and public companies are really pushing for additional diversity of thought. And, I look at my contacts and it's 99% of the senior investment professionals are male. And so I've focused on really creating this network of women that I call Project Sunflower to co-invest alongside other private equity groups. And, we bring the female perspective to the investment process. We serve as board representatives. We bring our industry expertise to the equation, and we can serve as mentors for junior members of the private equity firms and or even on the company side. So the real focus is on supporting and empowering women within private equity. I guess the next question you asked about was sort of what does success look like?
Yeah.
And
for example, like how many women on board seats, or how many co-investments, or what are the other metrics to succeed at the end of like 2021, for example?
Yeah, I don't have a specific number for the end of 2021, but I can tell you we've closed 3 deals to date. We're in the process of developing a nice pipeline of opportunities. We've introduced the private equity firms that we've partnered with to our networks and to help them, as they continue to create value at the portfolio company level. and really taking this now and adding scale going forward, both in terms of working with additional private equity firms, as well as adding more women to the network, is really what success looks like going forward.
For people who are interested, like who should reach out to you in terms of be a good partner for Project Sunflower? Who should reach out to you, and what's the best way to maybe, learn more about Project
Yeah,
Sunflower?
great question. From a private equity firm perspective, it's firms that are interested in bringing the female perspective on board, and or that have investors that are encouraging them to do so. I know it's hard to bring on female GPs, the pipeline issues, people talk about all the time, but this is sort of a win-win structure in that we bring the perspective to bear, and we also invest in deals. And so we can point to, the group can point to efforts and initiatives that they're taking to help in the issue of gender inequality out there. So private equity firms that are looking to do that can get in touch with me, probably through LinkedIn is the best way to approach that. And we've got 20 women in the network right now. We're looking to selectively add to that currently. But it's people who are experienced, have 20 plus years of industry experience, and have built a very successful career.
When you look at the people who have influenced your life, who are some of the mentors that you have had, male, female, whoever it's been, along your career?
Yeah, I really can't speak to any female mentors that I've had. I would say for me, the best mentor in my career was a guy by the name of Russ Swanson. And he was the president and CEO of PPM America, which is where I worked previously. And then he was the CIO of Thrivent Financial. And he was instrumental in helping us develop TwinBridge. He's a great person because he comes from a corporate background, and yet he's got a real entrepreneurial spirit and mindset. So, fantastic. And more importantly for me is he, kind of always supported me. He was very appreciative of my abilities. And like I said, provided a lot of support across my whole career. And so, I think everybody needs a mentor like a Russ Swanson as they move forward in their careers.
Why is it that you think maybe, and this might have been when your career was starting, but why do you think that there are not as many female mentors within this industry, or are there now, and it's now, being correctly addressed?
I think we're making strides in terms of having more senior women in leadership positions in finance, but there's still a long way to go. It's just been a field that's been very tough to maintain senior level women. And so we're starting to see initiatives that are helping, like a Project Sunflower, that are helping to reverse the trend and helping to create initiatives to keep women in senior professional roles, senior financial professional roles. But we still have a lot of work to do there, Jordan.
Why do you think you've been successful? What do you think are the key success factors in your career and your life?
I think it kind of just starts with having a solid foundation through education and experience in finance, and maybe tying back in some of the things that we've already talked about are really important elements as well. I think, again, having somebody who serves as a strong mentor and really having a mindset of setting goals and having the discipline to try and achieve them. I think those are really key factors of success, in particular in this field.
It sounds like those are more applicable to everyone. Like everyone would have discipline, everyone would have, the foundation, everyone would have, some type of mentor or general guide, but they don't all start firms that have $2.5 billion of assets under management. So there's something different about you. What is it why? Is it just your level of discipline, your level of competitiveness, or is it just that it's at a different level combined, or what are some of the things that, a little more specific, that has led to this?
I think it's just a combination of all the things, maybe to another degree, but I would also say, I don't think everybody does have those characteristics. I don't think that, everybody does have the same sort of foundation and or the same sort of goal orientedness and discipline. Everybody's got their own traits, but not necessarily those. And so, I guess I'm not entirely sure, but maybe there's a little bit of luck sprinkled in as well.
um, what are, when you look back at the career, what do you think are some of the most significant choices you have made throughout your life that have put you on this path?
That's really interesting. I would say that some of my more important choices are probably outside of my career choices and just sort of establish who I am as a person. And I would say one of those choices that I made was to go on a mission trip to Malawi, Africa, a few years back. And I went there for several weeks and taught in the schools, in the community schools with my daughters. And, the experiences stayed with me in a lot of different ways. I think one of the most impactful things that has stuck with me is seeing these people who are in the fourth poorest country in the world seem to be happier in general than a lot of us here in the United States are. And, it just strikes me, these people are in the fourth poorest country in the world. They have no material possessions to speak of. They have to worry about whether they're going to get their next meal. And yet they've somehow found a way to have some joy in their life. And so it was in-person, firsthand experience for me, in that money really just cannot buy you happiness. And I think some of that does translate back to sort of what you do with your career going forward. And that is, if you're really just focused on doing it to make money, it's not as fulfilling, and you may ultimately not be as happy and or as successful.
How did you decide to go to Malawi and do the mission trip?
Well, our church happened to have a relationship with this particular community in Malawi. And so they developed the foundation. And beyond that, it was just something that my girls and I thought would be impactful, and we were right.
Yeah, that reminds me of a vlog I did with Edward Crawford, and he went down to Dominican Republic. And it was interesting, like he went there with the mentality of serving them, but he realized they were serving him. I decided to say that backwards. Like he would wake up and there was food for him. And he's like, I've come down here basically, like, I want to help. But he realized it was like how these people who had really nothing had that mentality and how happy they were. So it's just a good reminder, especially now, of like just the need to give back and the need to keep perspective. But maybe if we can rewind all the way back to the very beginning. I'm curious about, when you are doing half marathons, you're doing triathlons, what is your internal dialogue when you hit the wall, or you are in a very dark place? Like, how are you getting through that?
Well, perfect example is the half marathon last year, where I just hadn't run that far in a long time. I'd been training for miles as opposed to do a single mile, as opposed to do 13 miles. And so I was in the half marathon last year, and I was at about mile 11, and I was on a really good pace. And then I just started, my legs didn't want to go anymore, and nothing wanted to go anymore. And the only thing I could think of right then was, keep going fast, because you don't want to run this far again. And so, that was my motivation.
Do it right this time. I don't have to. Yeah, I should have thought. Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, that's a good example of a hard time that you went through. But do you think are some of the more difficult times that you have been through in your life, and how did you get through them? and maybe how they kind of set you up for the person you have become?
I think one of the most challenging times that sticks in my mind is I was pretty early on in my career, and I was just started my job at PPM. I was getting my MBA at night. I just had baby twin daughters, and there just were not enough hours in the day, and there were not enough hours in the night in terms of getting sleep. And on top of that, it was a period of really low unemployment. And so it was very hard for us to get and retain a top quality nanny. And so it was a daily challenge to see if the nanny would show up or not. And so my husband and I would get up, we'd put our suits on, we'd wait and see if the nanny was going to show up that day. And if not, then we would start negotiating and debating whose day was more important. And so it was really an ongoing challenge, because we kind of felt like we were just burning the candle at all ends and not really doing anything very well. And, I think we kind of just got through that day to day, and with the help of some family and some friends. And we kind of said that if we can get through this, then we can get through, just about anything. And I think it kind of goes back to maybe one of the things that we were talking about a little bit before, just in terms of creating support. A lot of times people who are really, I'll call it type A, or really motivated, think they don't need other people to help them through. And I think it was just a reinforcement that, we all need a network of support to be successful in life.
That's interesting. It makes me think about the journey my wife and I have been down, and through the 10 years that we've been married. I'm sorry, 8 years. Oh man. Hopefully never mind, it is recorded. But it seems like every difficult time has just made us better and shown a completely different dimension. Like, I didn't know you were like that strong. And she's like, well, I didn't know you were that strong. And then, but like, you get through that together, and it's just incredible how that reveals who we really are or are not. When you kind of take a step back and you look at, the next, 5 to 10 years, what is the impact that you want to have on, your community? And I'll broadly define your community.
I've really focused my efforts on things that really empower women. And so that's why I've created Project Sunflower. I think that the idea is to draw on my relationships that I've developed over the years, to leverage my experience, and to help that be a platform to get women more involved in this incredible field of private equity, where there's so much opportunity, where it's a really exciting place to be. And so I'm really viewing my community, at least in terms of where I'm focusing most of my efforts these next 5 to 10 years, on really empowering women.
So it seems like you're very intentional about how you want to spend the next, this next chapter. Are there kind of underlying principles that you felt have, been at the forefront of your mind as you go throughout your career?
I would like to say yes, but I think a lot of times you just kind of put your head down and you work hard, and you look at deals, and you try and make good investments, and you raise capital, and you create portfolio reviews, and you just sort of do your day-to-day job. And I think that for me, I spent a lot of time doing that, and maybe didn't spend enough time sort of stepping back and saying, what can I do from a broader perspective to help people outside of me and people outside of, this firm. And so I think that's something that's really become front and center on the top of my mind over the course of the last couple of years here. And it really has taken shape in the form of focusing on what I can do to help women in finance, and in particular in private equity.
And for my last question, I'll bring in Zach if you are still there, and might or might not have a kid in one arm.
Yeah, he just woke up, but I'm here.
Perfect time.
That's why Debbie, your story, MBA at night and 2 kids and negotiating with your husband really resonated with me. My wife works full time. We have a 1-year-old that's hell on wheels and absolutely amazing.
Oh, only one?
Yeah, I can't complain. Definitely not two, which you are almighty and powerful
Three.
to be able to get through
3
that.
kids, right?
Yeah, but too
Tyler,
early on.
Two.
Well, I guess my next question would be, what advice do you have for veterans and anyone who is in some type of transition, a big transition in their life? It seems like sometimes you can feel, and I've been through my own experience, it feels like you don't know where to go next. Even though you've accumulated 5 or 10 years of experience, it feels like you know nothing about the next step. So, what is your advice to transitioning veterans? And I'd love to hear if, do you have any family members who are veterans?
Yeah, well, so my brother was a fighter pilot in the Navy, and he's gone on now to get his MBA, and he is now flying for FedEx. As you can imagine, given the circumstances, he is in hot demand and busier than ever. FedEx and other delivery systems are considered pretty essential workers during this time period. So I do have a brother that fits the bill there. But, I thought about this question in the context of women, but I also think it applies to veterans and really just about to anybody. I think that the advice that I would give is really, as you start a career, as you start to transition, develop what I'll call pillars of support. I think it's really easy as smart and motivated people to think that you can work hard and work efficiently and that you'll be successful on your own. And I think that works to a point. And then, as you continue to move up the ranks and as you continue to, want to move on to more things, then it's got sort of, it's less successful. And so when I say develop pillars of support, I mean, things like get a mentor, develop friends and families and personal coaches and all sorts of pillars around you that will help build you up and provide additional opportunities. And I think that, I look at it again in the context of women, but really the most successful people that I know are people that have their own personal coaches, that have mentors, that, in the case of a female, might have other female colleagues that they can turn to with particular questions, and really just as a sounding board as much as anything. And I wish that I had gotten that sort of advice early on in my career. I think it would have been really helpful.
That's huge, Debbie. Thank you so much. And hearing advice from someone with your track record is just invaluable to people like myself that are not only trying to get our foot in the industry, but just in that being versed in that environment. And it's kind of funny, Jordan does a lot with, interviewing and organizations that are empowering, women in private equity, which I think is amazing. But it's kind of funny because a lot of the stories from women like yourself that have been successful and then want to turn around and give back, especially to women. I've listened to a couple podcasts where they've actually talked about the same thing. I know I am the stereotypical, white male, which is in private equity, but having a very different background of being a veteran, active duty currently, but transitioning is not your atypical kind of cookie cutter background. So a lot of the advice, a lot of the story behind women trying to get in an industry really resonates with me because it's not this typical, like I said, it's not the atypical background.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find a lot of value in that as well.
I think the industry is large enough now and perhaps is more accommodating to people outside of the sort of traditional little box and actually values it. I mean, it's slow in coming, but I think I believe there's diversity, there's value in diversity of thought. And that includes not just
Hugely.
gender and race, but it also includes in terms of experience base as well.
Yeah.
And so I think, the broader industry is coming to that sort of conclusion too.
Hugely.
It's interesting because I forget the names of the studies, but there's been data out there that shows that diverse boards with more females on the board, more racially diverse or ethnically diverse, how it leads to better returns. So it's no longer just the old idea of, okay, we have to do this. Let's look way too homogenous, but now it's the data backs up that it generates more returns. This is better for the LPs. So now LPs are asking like, you guys need to do things differently.
Yeah, I think Harvard has done a lot of studies along those lines. And also going back a couple of years, McKinsey has done a number of studies that would support exactly what you just said.
This has been awesome. Debbie, thank you so much for taking the time with this.
Thank you.
It's I feel very lucky that my day-to-day existence is just having fun conversations.
Oh, Jordan, you're awesome.
I appreciate your time with this.